Last year, I failed to finish a reading challenge that I gave to myself, to read 100 books in 2021. In reality, I read about 28. When the ball dropped on New Year's Eve this time around, I once again gave myself a reading challenge. But this time I didn't go for 100 books. I went for 120, which of course means 10 books a month. It might be a little bit crazy of me to think that I could finish this challenge when I couldn't even finish half of the last one. But honestly, it's all about priorities. That's why you haven't seen me releasing new review every single day. I'm doing other things. One of them being reading. In fact, I'm actually doing pretty good. I've read 8 books this month already. 4 of them being the first 4 Chronicles of Narnia books. So I thought it would be nice to kind of go back to the mid-2000s, check out Disney's Chronicles of Narnia trilogy that they started and couldn't ever finish for whatever reason. The first film in the series was The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe essentially focuses on 4 brothers and sisters, Peter, Susan, Edward, and Lucy, as they discover a magical land that is found in a random wardrobe. This land is called Narnia, and for hundreds of years it has experienced a very long winter without ever experiencing Christmas. This long winter was created by the White Witch of the land that turns those against her to stone. And these siblings turn out to be a part of a Narnian prophecy to end the long winter and to bring prosperity back to the land where the lion Aslan reigns supreme. So I guess before I go further into the review, it's important to note that the series is regarded as, in part, religious, highly inspired by books of the Bible, and certain events in all of these books definitely mirror events that happen in the Bible. I mean, heck, at one point, water is turned to wine in one of the books. But in the same breath, I don't always see it as a religious thing. I see it as a fantasy world where good is pitted against evil. At the heart of it, that's the main takeaway. Good versus evil, light versus dark. And, I mean, the same thing can be seen in Star Wars, for instance. I do, however, roll my eyes at exact replications of things that Jesus did, for instance. I always saw Jesus as a character that could essentially do anything that he wanted, so there's no reason to specifically make Aslan do the exact same thing as Jesus, but I digress. I think that there's more of that in further books or further movies, but not so much in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The biggest Jesus thing that happens in this would be towards the end with the resurrection, so to speak. But other than that, you can definitely enjoy this film as a fantasy action adventure above all else. I think what's really interesting to note about the movie is that it's 2.5 hours long, which is very lengthy compared to the book, which I feel like you could sit there reading the book while watching the movie and finish the book before the credits roll here, since it is primarily a kid's book. But what's really cool is that not a lot of the movie was embellished with filler material or just action all the time. No. Everything that happens in the movie mostly already happened in the book and vice versa. When the events in the book slow down a little bit, the movie also gets slow to focus in on things like emotion and awe that the characters experience, which is very, very important for the audience to believe that this is a magical world and not just Earth. Likewise, with the more action-heavy moments in the book, that is also expanded upon in the film in the best possible light. This is the right way to make a great adaptation of a kid's book, not just split the one book into 5 different parts and milk as much money as you can from your audiences, fantastic beasts, but rather focus on emotionally impactful parts of the books and expand on them. Make the audience care about the characters and what they're feeling and experiencing. The Chronicles of Narnia is a film series that wants to make you feel inspired, much more than it is a film trying to preach some kind of religious agenda. And honestly, the action is second to anything else. It's good, the action is great even, but it's not the point, honestly. If I were to pick a moment that is my least favorite out of all the movies, it would be the action, I care much more about the adventure, the awe, the magic of Narnia, and especially the characters and their journeys. I also love the musical score by Harry Gregson Williams, who has had a lot of work over the last 30 years, but honestly, The Chronicles of Narnia was one of his best conducted works ever. But I also really like his work that he did in The Forbidden Kingdom as well. You also cannot forget to talk about Tilda Swinton as the White Witch here, and she does such a terrific job in her role, as she usually does in everything. Her character is cold, it's manipulative, and such a threat. You feel it as this ominous cloud, essentially. And she's just really popular to the point where you'll find yourself loving to hate her, essentially. Overall, this is a great film. I've seen it a few times over the years, but the sequels I've only ever seen once. I'll be curious on if after reading those stories, if my opinions on them have changed or not, even though I don't remember a ton of how I felt about the movies specifically. I have to say, my general feeling, thinking back to those sequels, was I didn't really love them. I didn't hate them, but they just fell into a vat of bleh soup. But again, that was another lifetime ago. I definitely need to see them again, just to see how I feel about them now. Do I have any specific negatives to talk about with the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Not a ton, actually. I think the biggest flaw at this point would just be the visuals, which in 2005, when this came out, they were top-notch, crazy good stuff. But nowadays, those visuals are certainly aged. I noticed here and there some green screen issues, the VFX of The Lion specifically. Some of that was trash compared to something like the Lion King remake, for instance. It's fine, like, it's not gonna bother you when you watch it, but in another 10 to 20 years, I have a feeling that'll look like hot garbage because we're always making leaps and bounds with technology in that front. But honestly, that's my only real negative. Everything else in the film is very solid. So let's talk about my final score for a second. This is one of those moments where both my technical unbiased score agrees entirely with my biased score, just how I generally feel about it. Because from a technical vantage point, even though the visuals weren't always as good as they used to be, you can't ignore the assortment of characters that were all very strong and human, believably family. The casting was either perfect or I just now have it in my head that these people are Peter. They are Edward, Susan, and Lucy. They just are. They aren't actors. It tells an important story with a great message. It's inspirational, emotional when it needs to be, epic when it needs to be. The music is great. There's very little to complain about here, honestly. So both my scores for my unbiased and biased categories were 90%. Meaning, when we combine those two scores together, we obviously come to the final rating for the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is 90%, 90 out of 100 possible stars. Guys, have you seen the first film in this series? Are you a fan of it? How do you think it compares to the book if you've read it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie.